Welcome, everybody, to the Ladies Talk Show. Thank you very much for being here. We have an action-packed hour for you here. We're going to we're starting the book today. This is a historic moment, so thank you very much for being here and for participating. It's very exciting to be at the beginning of something. So I wanted to start with a bit of a story about a student of mine that I spoke with this week. The theme for today is, whose fault is it? Whose fault is it? So there are things that our husband does that are, hold on a second, you're walking, we can hear. Maybe take your shoes off, sorry. There are things that our husband does that are very frustrating and annoying. And it's very easy, it is very easy to take everything out on our husband. Everything that goes wrong is our husband's fault. Everything, almost like a scapegoat. Maybe he does it to us too. We're not talking about what he should or shouldn't be doing. But what we want to look at today is, whose fault is it? So I'll tell you, I had a few calls this week from students. One student called me and said that she is totally irked because her husband never pays the bills on time. She said, if he never paid the bills, that's one thing, but he pays them 5 days late. Like, what would it take to just pay it, just shift his whole system to be so that he's 5 days early? She's very, very frustrated and angry with her husband, and she said, it colors everything. Okay, she said, I just get so frustrated at him because there's no way that's my fault. That's his fault. That's the onus on him. He's the one who's not doing that. So, you hear? And this is something that seems very, very black and white, that this is his fault and she should be mad at him for it. The question I have to ask, why does he have to pay the bills? Why should he do it? Why should he be the one to do it? And this is a question. I'm not sure. Maybe he's better in finances. Maybe he's not as worse as finances. But her assumption of everything that she's mad at him about starts from the fact that she has an assumption in her head that he should pay the bills. So she said, Leah, that's a good point. I hear that. I'm mad at him for something, and maybe I should just say, okay, I'm paying the bills. It doesn't make me feel taken care of. I want him to be the man. I want, that's how my family did it. That's how his family, that's how everyone I know's family did. The husband pays the bills. And I said, actually, I know a lot of families where the woman pays the bills. She's better at it. She's got more, leisure time, or maybe she has no leisure time. What am I even thinking? Women do not have leisure time. But anyway, it bothers her more to be 5 days late than it bothers him, so she takes it on. Whoever knows, maybe she's got a math degree. Fine. The question is, in your marriage, and she's been married over 15 years, I didn't get the exact thing, for that many years, it has bothered her that he is late on the bills. And what I'm saying, so I asked her the following question. I said, if you had to prioritize the most important things to you in your life, would this be one of them? And she said, well, it's important to me. I said, is it more important than the health of your family? Is it more important than your kids feeling well adjusted? Is it more important than having a good income? Is it more important than having the food come out tasty for the week? Or is that more important to you? What is on the priority of things? Where does this fit in? It seems to me like in the grand scheme of things, this is probably pretty low. And she said, okay, I'll give you that. And I said, so here you are, you're taking something that's really a low priority of yours and making it such a huge deal that it's keeping you from closeness to your husband. So she said, what do you think I should do? I said, frankly, I would take over doing the bills, because you're good at, she actually happens to be, she was an accountant, a bookkeeper, something. She does the books for whatever. So she has in her head a should. That's the first example I wanted to give you, just to rethink these long-term things. Whatever you have, think that if you can right now mull one thing that you're upset with your husband about, and you're really upset, and it seems real, if you can dig a little bit and think about, is this real? Is this justified? Is this appropriate? Is this really what I want to cause distance on something that really isn't that important to me? So let's look at another issue of fault. I have one more. A student came to me, and she said that her husband works to very late hours, and sometimes he's home at 7, sometimes he's at 8, sometimes 9, sometimes 10, sometimes 11. Usually, he has no choice over when he comes home. She gets it. His boss is a little bit tyrannical. He makes a good living, but his boss expects him to put up with this type of, lack of stability, lack of time in his life. So sometimes he will come home at 10 o'clock at night, and this student of mine said to me, I know he would rather be home with me. He's told me a million times, I know it's not his fault, but I get so upset with him for just not being there for me when I need him, that sometimes, if he isn't home at 10 o'clock at night, I will just, go to bed to punish, to quote-unquote punish him for making me wait for 3 hours for him. Fine. Whose fault is this? What? Oh, yeah, you can't go around. You'll be on camera. You have to go that way. You have to go around that way. Okay, here we go. Technical difficulties. Okay. Whose fault is it that he comes home late? Whose fault? It's not his. Now, maybe there are times when he does a project and finishes a project when he doesn't, need to. We all have a certain amount of control, but a lot of control isn't in our hands. So she is she's causing a separation in the marriage on an area that is not his fault. So what we're going to be looking at today is, I had a group of women and they all are saying, oh my goodness, when's the men's course? When's the men's course? Okay, I'm going to, right? So I hear. But the question is, are we willing to take responsibility for what's on our plate? If we take responsibility for what's on our plate and they don't do anything and don't change and don't help and don't move towards us a little bit, okay, then we can be annoyed with them. But if we aren't doing what we already can be doing for closeness, we have no right pointing our finger. So that's what we want to look at today. Okay, any questions on this? And then we're going to go start the book. Any questions? Any thoughts? Yeah, you have something? No? Okay. All right, fine. Okay, let's go. So read page 1. You have to hold the mic up. I got you an extra mic stand. I don't know where it is, but anyway, okay. We're doing our but you have to hold the mic right up to you. Okay, good. Okay, this is our first day. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. And this is our first historic moment of the Ladies Talk Show live. And we are, on teleconference. And we just very much appreciate everyone being there. You'll see the way the course, it sort of lays out is I start with a little bit of a lesson for the week. And then we go right into the material. And then we'll have a discussion about it. Okay, so go ahead, Sarit.
Chapter 1, The Quest. I was raised to be a corporate executive. In the new era...
Oh, wait, sorry. I should start by telling the people, the listeners who aren't looking at the book. The book is called, the book is called Marriage Secrets. It's written by Leah Richeimer, who happens to be me. There you go. There's Leah. Oh, she brought hers to follow along. That's so cute. And we're going through the source material here. There's 220 sources here. It's basically our tradition, our Masorah, all in a nutshell in one book. And that's what we're going to be going through. Okay, Sarit, you're on Marriage Secrets, page 1.
Chapter 1, The Quest. I was raised to be a corporate executive. In the new era of equality, when asked what I wanted to be when I grew up, the bolder the dream, the greater the praise. And yet, for all the talk about choice and self-determination, conspicuously absent from the choice box was the option to make my husband the top priority of my life. That politically incorrect answer would have landed me in the dustbin of history, never to be heard from again. And so it was, I spent my formative years polishing my resume. Bachelor of Arts in Economics with distinction, Dean's List, Honor Roll, Vice President of the Economics Honor Society. I waltzed into my first job interview as a broker, puffed up, only to be sent to the elevator with the admonition, there's nothing on your resume that shows us that you can do this job. I left thoroughly dejected. When I got home, I tore my resume into little pieces. I placed the bits into an envelope and mailed them back with a note. The only thing that's important is that I have the determination to succeed. This story was told as I was called to the lectern to receive a Broker of the Year award. In less than a year, I'd amassed the second largest portfolio at the firm of 400 brokers, 397 of them men. Standing there at the ripe old age of 23, I was holding that brass ring, the ultimate prize, clutching it rather tightly actually, and the lack of fulfillment and purpose was earth-shattering. Perhaps if I had never risen to such heights, I would have always thought that when I finally attained such success, then I would be fulfilled. I might have spent my entire life grasping and hoping, waiting for the day when I finally achieved my dreams. But at that moment, it was clear to me that I had been sold a bill of goods, that professional success was everything. To my horror, that lie was now laid bare. Discuss that a little? Okay.
Yes. I mean, like what? What do you think? Is there a question there?
No,
see if the ladies on the call-ins, if anybody has a question.
Right.
You do *6 or you put the... This is basically laying out the backstory of how I came to embrace our traditions. Figure them out and then write them up. 6 years later. It took me 6 years.
And it tells them, right, *6. If anyone has a question, you can just dial *6 on your phone.
Okay, in the meanwhile, why don't you go on ahead?
Fists in the air. At that moment, my existential angst was profound. What was my purpose in life? Without the goal of business accomplishment, where would I find meaning? I still had a job, but my mind had shifted from being a career woman to simply having a career. I knew there had to be more to life. Thus began my spiritual journey. I began attending various Jewish classes and events. Eventually, I ended up in a class in which the rabbi's deep Torah wisdom resonated with me. He said things I had never heard before, and yet it felt like he was merely putting words to the deep truths I had known all along. At the end of that very first class, I asked the rabbi why everything sounded so familiar. He responded that I had already learned it all in the womb. That answer, which seemed so odd to me at the time, didn't prevent me from coming back and learning with that rabbi for many years afterwards, and reading as much Torah literature as I could get my hands on. Meanwhile, I met my husband, and the very first Orthodox wedding I ever went to was my own. We followed the Torah ways with full hearts. However, I still fully bought into the modern way of thinking that a marriage based on equality was the new gold standard. Having been raised on the catchwords of choice, equality, and fairness, my fists were still raised high in the air. I was indoctrinated that all chores should be divided 50-50. Newly married, I asked my husband, since we both work full-time, would you prefer to cook Mondays and Wednesdays or Tuesdays and Thursdays? As this idea was not very appealing, he suggested that we cater in our dinners, which is precisely what we did, much to my satisfaction. But little did I know, as we will come to see, that fairness has little to do with happiness in marriage. I'm no stranger to operating boldly in the arena for which I was bred. I consider myself to be part of the team that has helped women to stand strong against the prevailing male headwind. In the workplace, I've come to adapt, as every woman does, to the changing roles and power plays that the ever-dynamic business world throws at you. What has been the much harder role to navigate, the one that I still grapple with every single day, is at what point does a corporate executive lay down her weapons and become an adoring wife? Or an even better question, is becoming an adoring wife a valuable goal to aspire to in the first place? Obvious to anyone who has been married for more than 10 minutes, the well-honed persona that is a necessary requirement in the marketplace is best checked at the front door if a marriage is to survive, much less thrive. I realize that I cannot march forth, weapons drawn, and expect a good outcome. With all the grand vision of the world of equality, I knew I could be anything I wanted to be, do anything I wanted to do. This newfound freedom was exhilarating. But when I was knee-deep in battlefront tactics or strutting with glory at my business prowess, it was nearly impossible to act the part of the doting wife. In fact, it actually felt downright degrading to do so. The fallout from the new world we were trying to create had ramifications far into the future that we never anticipated.
Okay, good. Is that the end of that heading?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So basically, if everybody's following along, it's saying that we were raised to think that equality is everything. And then people say, oh, you don't believe in equality? Like, hello? Okay. I do believe in equality. I think that it is absolutely, we should be ashamed of the fact that our nation should be ashamed that we still make 67 cents on the dollar for a man. Equality in the workplace is crucial. It's worth fighting for. It's worth arguing for. It's worth really working on. But equality in home is the wrong measurement. The measurement for a home is peace. And when we're using, as we see here, when you're using the measurement of equality, it's a disaster. And that's what we're going to be learning a lot about here, is how do you navigate in this world where you can still be a powerful woman, you can still, actualize your intent, you can maximize your potential as a woman, and yet not care about the equality equation. We're going to get there. Okay, go on ahead. Is there any questions here in the studio audience or on the line? Any questions? Why don't you pull one of these questions, I think, because I think we need to, what do you think?
Yeah, let me do one, zero clarity, and then we'll finish that. Zero clarity. With this seismic shift in the male and female roles over the last century, I felt that there were often fairly clear standards for how we should move forward in the workplace. Even if the reality fell way short of the advances that we had all hoped for example, in closing the gender pay gap, most people would likely still agree that it truly should be equal pay for equal work. In the courts, around the water cooler, and in the boardroom, a generalized consensus of politically correct thinking has slowly shifted attitudes and actions. And woe to the outliers who made a gaffe into an open mic opposing this consensus. There would be no lack of retribution. But as I struggled to create joy in my marriage, I found that there was zero clarity on how to move forward in our male and female roles at home. Whereas the watchword equality was very well suited to the corporate battlefront, it was a much more trouble-laden concept when applied to my marriage. For why would a woman want to be equal to a man when it's far more enjoyable to be superior? This is a joke for those of you who might be tempted to pull the sentence out of context. I was actually pretty shocked when I began to recognize that my corporate skills and political philosophies were not working out quite as well for harmony in my marriage. I had always taken it for granted that I would have a fabulous relationship with my husband. I expected to enter the world of wedded bliss from the moment we got married. How is it that a woman was as accomplished as I was could be so caught up in a downward spiral of petty squabbles and perpetual irritation? Why had all of my fantasies and expectations gone up in smoke? Home was everything for me now, despite my career, so why wasn't I succeeding? Either something was very wrong with me or something was very wrong with the system. Okay, don't answer that. But seriously, how had I worked so diligently to be a successful person and yet be so inept at the most important relationship in my life? This was vital information I needed for my own happiness. I must admit that at first I was angry that I wasn't better prepared for marriage, that no one had taught me how to excel in this area of my life. But I came to realize that my role models and teachers were also in a quandary. Even in the most sheltered of homes, signs of the modern gender role philosophies had trickled in. The planet had shifted, and none of us knew how these new women's roles should be played out in our daily lives with a real live husband. We were all living a grand experiment gone awry. And tragically, without a map, many of us were left to wander around aimlessly and angrily. My heart sank as I realized that using equality as the mandate for marital success was an abysmal failure. Not because my husband felt this way, but because it was clear that this was not leading me to harmonious marriage. My question with a lot of this, I know that this I could relate to because I was the same, very much a powerhouse, and I liked my independence, and I was always like that. That was from a young girl, from 8 years old. I was out in camps, and I wanted to do everything on my own, and I very much had that in me that I'll get married, and there'll be a partner, but we're very much going to be equal, and we're going to be in the same boat, and I can still do my own things. And so it was very hard for me to shift to asking him permission for things, or should we do this? If someone invited us for Shabbos, I wanted to go. So I said yes. I didn't take into consideration that he may not want to go. So definitely I can understand that. But I find that even people that are not independent, I have a sister who's not much more motherly and wifely, if that's a word, than I am. Much more the type that she just wanted to get married and she wanted to be taken care of. And she wanted her husband to dote on her from morning to night. She does not want to work. She'd be just as happy to stay home and cook dinners and take care of the house and take care of the kids. And she doesn't want to work, and she doesn't want to be independent. She's willing to give up all independence. But she still she didn't have the equality issue, but she still had the same, she maybe had it a little bit easier at points, but she still had the same complication of getting married to someone and it not being what you envision marriage to be, this just perfect.
The difference between expectations and reality.
Right.
Yeah, I got it.
So it's you know what I'm saying? It's not, I almost feel that, yes, as someone who's the outside world's affecting them might and wants to be equal might have a much harder time. But it seems like nobody's having it easier.
Oh,
meaning it seems like even those who are not independent.
So then they might have other issues. You know, the first issue that hit me, excuse me, that hit me between the eyes is, wait a minute, I was sold a bill of goods. I was told, grow up, be a powerhouse, be whatever. Then you get married, you become the superwoman, and fine, everybody's happy. And yet we're petty little squabbles over nothing. You know, how could I feel so successful in so many areas of my life and walk into marriage and feel so ill-prepared? And that is what is such a tragedy, because the answers of how to have beautiful harmony, bliss, ecstasy, pleasure, joy, satisfaction in your marriage right now, today, are all available to us. They've been available for 3,000 years. They've been working for 3,000 years. And yet, you stop the average person, you ask them, you know, how do you, bake a chicken? How do you, everybody knows the answers to everything. How do you have a good marriage? Well, guess what? We have a Masorah, we have a tradition that has, hundreds of directives on what to do and how to do it. And it's been completely forgotten and completely turned upside down. So to answer your points, Sarit, is that it starts with recognizing that equality isn't the be-all and end-all of what makes a relationship. You can have no equality in the marriage, or little equality in the typical sense of him doing 50%, you doing 50%. That's what I'm talking about, equality in this point in time. You can have zero equality and still be extraordinarily happy, like this one woman who just that you're talking about, that just wants to be a stay-at-home mom. So that it can work and can be happy. Now, the balance of that equality is a level of respect, that your husband respects you, respects your opinions, that there's a level of being heard, that you're validated, that your points are validated. And then there's a whole lot of stuff that we'll get into right now. So why don't you go on, Sarit, because I think it's critical that we move that this issue be covered thoroughly. Go.
Okay. Core mission. At this point in my life, I made a very pivotal decision. I felt like I had to do something or face a lot of everlasting disappointment and frustration. I realized I was going to have to take matters into my own hands, to research everything I could, and to somehow figure it all out. I had no idea how I would accomplish it, but at that juncture, I made a sweeping decision to dedicate my entire life to having an awesome marriage. And my aim wasn't simply to have a better marriage. I wanted to go down in history as having had one of the greatest marriages in the history of the planet Earth. Yes, I know I tend to be melodramatic, but I meant it then, and I still mean it to this day. I want my husband to wake up every day completely blown away by what an extraordinary wife he has. I want him to feel honored and respected, and to rely on me as a constant wellspring of love and support. And personally, I want to have maximum satisfaction, contentment, and joy in my marriage beyond my wildest dreams. This quest became the core mission of my life. No matter what else was going on, this was always at the forefront of my heart and mind. When faced with a choice in my life, the direction I would go was almost always determined by what was better for peace in the home. I was determined to succeed no matter what difficulty might stand in my way. Doing my homework. As I was already busy soaking up every bit of Torah I could get my hands on, that is where I turned to for my research. I decided to mine this rich territory for all the treasures I could find there. I set out to capture our Shalom Bias Masorah, our tradition of marital harmony, to the best of my ability. Armed with stacks of Torah books and shoe boxes filled with Torah audio classes, I began delving into the ancient secrets of our sages. I asked endless shilas, questions of rabbis, and had marathon learning sessions with Rebbitzins. I went to classes and became the nudge in the room, not leaving the teacher alone until I was satisfied with the answer. I regularly hashed out these ideas with my husband and would not let something go until I was convinced that everything I was learning was internally consistent. Even though I hadn't been schooled in this ancient wisdom from birth, I was very determined and tried my hardest to be diligent. Yet sometimes in heartfelt prayer, I would choke up with self-pity at the unfairness of it all. Why couldn't I have been raised with all of this knowledge? With my pitiful Hebrew language skills and inability to remember biblical names and timelines, I felt deficient. Hardly the ideal self-image for someone who grew up taking great pride and care in academic scholarship. Nonetheless, I persevered, and by the grace of Hashem, my training as an economist gave me precise methodology to turn deep and lofty Torah concepts into practical everyday tools. It was, of course, no coincidence. Only Hashem could have orchestrated this synchronicity so advantageously for me, and I'm eternally grateful. This learning and trying to figure out how to turn the lessons into daily habits became my all-consuming passion. Yet often, the insights I found was antithetical to everything I'd grown up believing. The first time I read the words of the Rambam, a husband should be like the king in his wife's eyes. She should have a certain awe. Her actions should be according to his will. I was outraged. Why shouldn't my husband's actions be according to my will? My blood boiled at this more than I cared to admit. But thank God, although my internal philosophies were strong, my determination to have a great marriage turned out to be even stronger. When I was brave enough to actually try to fulfill the teachings of our sages, things seemed to go magically well. I remember being in the midst of a power struggle about whether we should either replace the air conditioner in my old car or just do a less expensive temporary repair. I was certain that my opinion was correct and kept repeating it to no avail. Finally, in utter exasperation and with the Rambam ringing in my ears, I just felt silent, a miracle in itself, and said, "You decide." Besides witnessing my husband practically falling off his chair, he also decided that I had driven that car long enough. A few days later, to my utter shock, we bought our neighbor's minivan. I feel like it keeps saying that where you felt that you didn't have that upbringing, that sort of from birth upbringing with all that information, so you were almost challenged in this area. I feel like I was brought up from birth upbringing, and so many women. If I had to look around from the people I know, and I was given a sort of a job to say, tell me who you know that has a good marriage that you would like to aspire to be like. And I had to come up with couples in my head. I could come up with maybe two.
Now or then?
Now. One is very old, meaning they're an older couple, married 40, 50 years. And one is younger, meaning they're married 20, 25 years. But that's really it. Meaning I'm not seeing even from birth people who are not trying to be equals or are not trying to be. I feel like somewhere along the line we're not being taught this type of stuff the way Chazal wants it. I see a lot of very powerful women that do want to be, not equals, but do want very much to sort of have their, and again, I'm not saying that's why the divorce rate is so high, but I feel like today we're not seeing those older generation of women who were just happy to be at home and their husband came home and happy to just take care of him, and they want
right. And I don't know that necessarily that's the direction we want to head or can head, because
you can't go backwards?
Well, no, I mean you're equating lack of equality to being a barefoot and pregnant, or being, at home and a stay-at-home mom and whatever. And I don't think that's what it means. I don't think that's what Chazal means. And in fact, yes, a woman is supposed to respect her husband, but a husband is supposed to respect her more than himself. So I think it's very easy to go off on a tangent and think and use the equality eyes to judge everything, and that's certainly not what this book is about at all. We're starting with that thing because that's where I was coming from. So we're getting off on a tangent on equality. That's not what this is about. What our tradition, what our Masorah gives us, is not anti-feminist movement. I consider myself I was a broker. It was at the forefront of pushing the envelope of what a woman could achieve in terms of the glass ceiling. It's much more about meeting what a woman truly, truly needs in her life. And I think we've completely lost touch with that. I think we I think it's been stolen from us. It's like we're not allowed to deeply think about what is most important, what's going to give me the most satisfaction in my life. And there are clear answers for that, for each individual and for women as a whole. But we're not, we're going to get into a whole thing about being cherished. And a woman, most women want to be cherished. They want their husband to just, I think, oh, you're just so special. You're so wonderful, right? That's been stolen from us. We're going to get through this and, we're going to look at it. But the fact of wanting to be cherished is so anti-power in this country and this world. And yet, deep down, I can meet up with any woman and ask her, and maybe she'll, I don't need to be cherished. Nope, I want him to respect me and to look up to me and think I'm capable and think well of me and whatever. I don't need to be cherished. Okay, maybe that's a certain percentage that it's wrong. But in our sources, in the Torah, it talks about how we have a deep desire to be cherished by our husband. So either we're not able to admit it, it's been groomed or brainwashed out of us, or we're just completely at a lack of being in touch with what our true needs are. And once we understand what our needs are, right, by introspection, Chazal tell us, we learn from our Torah what women's needs are, and we can learn that out. And you can see if it fits or if it doesn't fit. It takes introspection. But once you do that introspection and you know what your needs are, my goodness, how empowering it is to be able to get them met. What a difference in your life you will have if you know what you need and how to get it. Instead of being frustrated all the time and not even really knowing why. That's what we're going to work on here. We're also going to be working on, there's in the Torah, many places it says that the husband is the giver and the wife is the receiver. And the women, the first time they come into a class, they're like, I'm not the receiver, I'm giving all day long. And women are. We give all day long. But, so how do we make sense of this? How can the Torah say that the husband is the giver and the wife is the receiver? What does that mean? Does knowing that information change our lives? So here's the bulletproof answer to that. Understanding that the husband is the giver and that the wife is the receiver means that you can now work on receiving. Rather than being all over the place and try this and that and that, like a crazy chicken with the head cut off, right? Rather than doing that, you can work on being a receiver. And once you work on being a receiver, just as our Masorah teaches us to do, once you work on being that receiver, there is a level of joy, satisfaction, and contentment that is available to you that you have never, since the day you have been born, never felt. Until you learn to actualize exactly what you were created to do, there's always a missing in your life. The extraordinary part about this is we have exact step-by-step instructions on how to do it, and they weren't invented by Leah Richeimer. These are our sources from the Torah that took apart the Torah and interpreted. What does this mean? What does that mean? How do you do this? If you do this, if you mavater, for instance, if you give in on something that you feel very strongly about, and you say, you know what, I'm not going to fight about this anymore. I'm going to mavater. Guess what? That's a little tiny tool, little and tiny, but let's just call it a little tiny tool because we've got hundreds of them we're going to be going through. That little tool will increase the level of happiness and closeness in your marriage like nothing else can. Just that one tool. We've got hundreds of them we're going to be going through. So it's not being a doormat. Does anybody look? Do I look like a doormat? No. Okay. We are not doormats. We do not want to be doormats. We can be powerful, strong, accomplishing women. And yet, if we take the tools that we were given. We were handed them at Har Sinai. If we take those tools and use them, a whole vista of joy and satisfaction and happiness is available to us. And that's what we're going to be learning here, going through. Okay, I want questions. You guys have been too quiet. I know it's all intimidating with all these microphones.
If you have a question, you can just press *6.
But I'm counting on you guys are my peeps, so I need you to ask questions, okay? You all came here today. We have a nice turnout here, but I would like to have questions.
*6 on your phone if you want to ask a question.
Somebody here. You have a question? It's all clear. Crystal clear. What about what?
Oh, wait, we have a question.
Okay, very nice. That's why it's called a call-in show, so that people can call in and get questions.
Okay, Can you hear us? Hi, you're on.
I hear you. Do you hear me?
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Hi, it's Dina Friedman. Hi. Okay, so I just had a question. Basically, I do the group in my house once a week, and we're like...
Are you coming to the training a little bit? In a little bit, we're going to have a training.
I'm not going to be available, but I'm not going to be able to, like, listen in, but I'm going to get the recording. I'm very excited.
Fantastic. Okay, great. Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, so basically, I have, let's say, 6 of us, and let's say everybody's married. I'd say 2 to 5 years is, the range over there. Anyway, we're up to chapter 2, and we were reading about being cherished, and the girls were talking, and they're like, I don't really get it. Like, obviously, I want to be cherished. Like, I wanted to get married to be cherished. So, like, what's the big deal? I don't feel like I'm a powerhouse woman. I just want my husband to cherish me. Like, why are we, like, spending a whole chapter discussing it? So I wasn't really sure, like, how. I was like, well, everyone has to know how to be cherished. I'm like, okay, let me get that right answer from you, like, what exactly I could tell them, because none of them feel like they're these, powerhouse women or feminists that, like, are like, oh, I don't want a man, I'm, great by myself, or they all said, like, I wanted to get married to be cherished and to be taken care of. So, like, what's this whole thing about being cherished and like, they didn't feel like it, like, applied to them,
That's fantastic. You're saying that they already want to be cherished. They don't have to be convinced to want to be cherished.
Right.
Exactly.
As crazy as it is, since you weren't on the line, but it's exactly the question I kind of asked. Meaning, even if somebody's not an equalist, if that's the word,
right.
equal type of woman, a woman who wants to be an equal and just wants to get married to be loved, why is she still struggling and having such a hard time if all she wants is to have that?
So your question is why, that's already done with them. So meaning you guys could skip chapter 2 and go on to chapter 3. Is that what they're basically? Is that basically what they're thinking?
Yeah, basically they're like, why do we need chapter 2? Why are we spending so much time on it? We all know we want to be cherished. That's why I got married. Like, let's move on. And I'm like, okay, let's not move on until I make sure that we, like, cover it completely, So I just wanted to, like, give them an answer so that they understand, like, does it unless I don't know, like, does it apply to them if you're not, like, if you feel like, oh, I do want to be cherished, is that enough? And then let's move on? Or is there something deeper that they need to understand about being cherished? Like, I'm not sure. I want to just give them, like, the proper guidance. So
actually, if they're married 2 to 5 years, it could be a generational thing in the sense that the princess generation is, it could be that. But also, it's for the last 60 years, 60, not 16, not 6, for 60 years, there has been a very, very strong push to actually extricate wanting to be cherished out of women. It's been deliberate. It's been the secular world, which trickles down to the whole universe, okay? It has been, worked on being extricated like a fine surgeon going in. Okay, here, cut open, here's the appendix, let's get it out, let's get every vestige of appendix out of there. Every vestige of wanting to be cherished, let's remove that from womankind. And then we will be happy. And it's been deliberate. I'm not angry at the these women who did it, they did it with the thinking in mind that women are subservient, women are pushed down, women, it's a man's world, they, you know, whatever. I get it. I get why they did it, and, you know, I probably had a hand in extricating it as well. I'm going to win. I'm going to succeed. I'm going to, you know, certainly, there, as you read in the opening, there were 400 men, 3 women, you know. So I had my share of it. Walking into a board meeting, they're all men, and you walk in, everyone's quiet, you know. Like, okay, you know, whatever they were talking about, that, you know. So you know, I know what it is in a man's world. So I get why they were doing the extrication. But what we're left with is one of women's deepest needs. It's not just that it's not being fulfilled. A woman doesn't even know that's her need. And if she feels needy and wanting to be cherished, she feels like something's wrong with her and she's less than and she's not powerful. So the reason this book has an entire chapter on being cherished is to make it okay for people to realize, oh, okay, that would be kind of nice. Now, you have a group of women, Kol Hakavod, it's fantastic. You have a group of women who already, yeah, we want to be cherished. So my advice as the facilitator for your group is to go quickly through the chapter if they're already there yet. But don't skip it. I'll tell you why. These women were all raised by mothers who probably are not in touch with their desire, their deep desire, deep, how they were actually created to be cherished. So there's something, they're not pure, I want to be cherished. That might be on the surface, that might be very obvious. There are vestiges that you will unconceal as you go through the chapter. Excellent question, and you're leading them absolutely right. You can go through it quicker if you want to. Just make sure when you're facilitating, you're watching the room, and people are nodding perfunctorily like, question that. You know, they might just be wanting to feel part of the thing, but really there's part of them like, you know, they're listening. You know, it's very, very important that this is extricated, that the brainwashing is unbrainwashed, so that you can go weiter. Because very fast after these opening chapters, the book goes boom, 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 and hits very heavy with some very heavy, earth-shattering shifts from their thinking. And if they still don't get that they want to be cherished, if that doesn't resonate with them, and if they aren't there really and wholly, then the rest of the book they'll be like, well, maybe I'll try it on, you know, rather than really taking it to heart. Outstanding question. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions similar? Very, very good question. Thank you. Anything else? Yeah.
I think there's a lot of distraction from what I see. Like, people just get very caught up in their lives that they're not thinking about it as much.
Yeah.
Like not focused on that aspect, like those needs. They just kind of cruise. So I guess it's like the need to stop and really like focus on what you're doing this for and how this, like the big picture, I guess.
Right.
Like that's easy to just not think about on a day-to-day basis, going through your reading.
Yeah.
Right, but when it gets hard, it gets frustrating. I mean, when you first get married, and it's supposed to be, you have this guy, and everything's like going to be great now, and you're going to be 2 people, and you're going to become the best of friends.
You need the microphone, sweetie. Hold it up. Oh.
Do you hear me? Yeah. And they're all supposed to be best friends, and you're supposed to be, you found your perfect match, your basher, and this is it. And then it's not it. And it's hard. And you're struggling. And you're like, why is he doing that? And why doesn't he understand me? And why is he not giving me what I need? And you're going through all these things. So then you almost like, in a sense, get yourself busy with other things because you're good at those other things and you know how to do them and you're okay with it. So it becomes easier. I think also I find sometimes once somebody has children, they sort of feel like, oh, I know how to do this. Like, okay, I could soothe my baby. That becomes their entire focus because they want to feel good about what they're doing. And to do it well with their husband, if they're struggling with it, it's much harder. So it's much easier to sort of check out. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I hear that all the time, which is why I feel like somewhere something is not, either we're being told the wrong thing, we're being told you're going to get married and have the most wonderful life, and that's a lie, which I don't believe it is, because the Torah is saying marry someone, right? So there's got to be something to it. They're not saying be alone.
Right, right. So you're...
Just to add to that, like, I mean, I'm only in my 20s, and I had like a few friends, you know, say to me, like, what's going to be when the kids are older? Like, I'm nervous about my relationship with my husband. Are we going to have to talk about it? Are we going to... And I'm like thinking, like, that's really... Because we're in our 20s, and like, they're distracting themselves so much with the kids that they're so concerned, will there be a relationship without the kids?
That's... Yeah, no.
Go back to your point, like, yeah, nobody's... I mean...
So here's the issue. Here's Shalom Bias, which is peace in the home. And what you're saying about distraction, it's over here. Yeah, you know, oh yeah, I've got to get the tablecloth, and then, oh, this one needs to go to the doctor for the dentist, and this has to happen, and here's Shalom Bias. You know, it's like this, right? And what we are meant to be is Shalom Bias is meant to be part of our is supposed to be our number one priority in our entire life, right here, 24/7. There, in the Torah, there's about 7 sources that say that we spend eternity with our husbands. There's 0 that say we spend eternity with our children, and yet that's where everybody puts all of their time. So the distractions that you're saying, if we are to understand that, once you have an insight about something, the difference between knowledge and information, you can digest it, and but you can forget it, and it's kind of... Insight means once you know something, you can't go back to not knowing it. So now that you know that the most important priority in your life, forget about the right thing to do or whether it's, what God wants of us, for your own happiness. For your own happiness, if Shalom Bias, if peace in the home is the number one priority in your life, your level of satisfaction and pleasure and fulfillment in your life is about to skyrocket. Just having that one insight. So here's the story with distraction. If you have 2 opposing forces, and you have somebody who wants to, get closer to their husband and bond with their husband and bring them close and not have fights over stupid little things, and and even when they have a discussion, have a serious discussion, but not in a fighting way. And you're getting close, and you have that, right? And on the other hand, you have somebody who wants to break the couple apart, which is called the Yetzer Hara, okay? Wants to not have that closeness, not have that presence of God in their marriage, wants to break it apart. What would your tactic be? If you come up to them and say, hey, you don't really want closeness, they'll be like, yeah, I really want closeness. You would distract them. That would be your number one tool, is to distract them with, the phone, the thing, all the millions of things that we're being driven on. And the issue about the distraction is that in the moment, that one email, that one text, that one phone call seems almost irrelevant. Like, oh, come on, one phone call. But when it always takes precedent, it's very interesting. There's a minhag, a custom in the House of Israel, where you have a level of books. If you have a secular book and you have a siddur, you'd always put the siddur on top of the secular book because it's more holy. It's a holier article, right? There's things that are holy and there's things that aren't holy. Things that have Hebrew in them, that have, that are precious to God. We put them, we don't stack things up arbitrarily. Okay, that's we all know that. When you are carrying a siddur, where does your phone go? Is your phone above it, or is your phone below it? I mean, we know what the answer is, but you have to think about to yourself, where are you holding? When you're walking around, where's your phone? If the phone is little and a book is big, so it's awkward to carry a phone under a siddur. But that's where it belongs. In the morning, do you say your morning blessings first? Or do you check your email first? So having this level and depth of understanding of what's important, what's holy, what's prioritized, shifts your life from one moment to the next. And if you are to understand, and we'll be getting to it, we'll get there, how crucial to your own happiness in life, putting your husband first and your marriage first. Once you get there, and there are people who've been in the class a couple of years or whatever, and you know, once you make that shift, it's like all the other particles that are a mess in your life, and this kid's doing bad in math, and that one's, you know, the dishwasher's not working, whatever those things are. Once you have your eye on the correct ball, it's like either they get fixed because there's more blessing in the house, or it doesn't bother you as much that they're not fixed. So it's a win-win-win-win-win, and the way to start, and the homework for this week about distraction is one time between now and next week to, at a point where you are distracted from your husband and putting him first, just say, oh okay, this is my homework, and put him first. Drop what you're doing. Let the dinner burn. Let the, the clicking, the thing, and you had to get back, and someone texts you, where are you? Question, are you coming? Are you coming? Question mark, question mark, question mark, and they keep, let them come. Sorry, I was with my husband. Sorry, on the phone with my husband. Sorry, greeting my husband at the door. Sorry. Be sorry to other people, not to your husband. That's the homework for the week. Okay, I think we're going to end here. I want to thank everybody very much for coming to the Ladies Talk Show, and thank you.